Some people crave power so badly, they'll make a costume, print a fake badge, and show up at your door in the middle of the night waving a gun, all to collect an imaginary HOA fine. That's not paranoia. That's exactly what happened to us. And if my 13-year-old son hadn't done what he did next, things could have gone very, very differently. But before I tell you what happened at 1:03 a.m., when my son stepped between a fake cop and our front door, let me back up and tell you how we got here. We had just moved into what we thought was our dream home. Quiet cabin in the North Carolina mountains. No city noise, just trees, space, fresh air, wrap-around porch, enough land to stretch. And after years of cramped apartments and HOA nightmares, this place felt like freedom. Rachel, my wife, called it our escape plan. Eli, our 13-year-old, called it the best place on earth. And for 48 hours, that's exactly what it was. Until she showed up, clipboard in hand, like she was running a Fortune 500 company instead of a neighborhood. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," she said with a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm Donna Beckett, president of the HOA. I stared at her like she'd just said she was the Queen of England. HOA? What HOA? This place wasn't even listed as an HOA community in the real estate paperwork. But she didn't wait for me to respond. She pulled out a thick binder labeled Community Standards and handed me a page with a list of starter violations. Starter violations. Rachel stood frozen with a box in her arms. Eli was bouncing a basketball on the porch, and Donna's eyes snapped to him like she'd just seen a war crime. "That's not allowed," she snapped, pointing at the hoop we'd installed the day before. Recreational equipment visible from the street. First warning. The street she was referring to was a gravel loop that maybe 3 cars used a day, and the hoop? It was a portable one you could fold up. But I stayed calm. I've worked in private home security for over a decade. I've seen power trippers before. You don't fight them. You outlast them. "Sure," I said politely. "If you can show me where that's in the HOA bylaws, I'll take it down." Donna blinked, like she wasn't used to being questioned. "You'll find the violation listed under Section 4C1. Spoiler, there is no Section 4C1. There isn't even a subsection C in the original HOA bylaws." I checked. Twice. That night, there was a notice taped to our front door. Violation, unauthorized recreational equipment. Fine, $200. The basketball hoop vanished the next day. We assumed someone stole it until we found a second notice taped in its place. Violation corrected. Fine, doubled to $400, no signature. Just the HOA seal, and a timestamp that said 2:17 a.m. That was the first time Eli asked if we had security cameras installed. He wasn't scared yet, just curious. But his voice? There was a note of caution in it, like he knew something was coming. I told him we'd install some by the weekend. I lied. I installed the first one that same night. Then, 2 mornings later, Rachel stepped outside to get the mail and froze. There was a folded note taped under the mailbox flag. Cream-colored paper, no return address, no handwriting, just block print in black Sharpie. Comply or vacate. Final warning. The note was tucked into a plastic sleeve. Not a drop of dew on it. Someone had placed it there carefully, with intent. Now Rachel was scared. And so was I. That night, Eli walked into the kitchen after brushing his teeth. He looked smaller than usual, shoulders hunched, voice quieter than normal. "Dad, I saw someone outside last night, across the road, just standing there, watching the house." My stomach twisted. I asked him if he was sure. He nodded. They had binoculars. I saw the glass catch the porch light. I stepped out onto the front porch and stood there for 5 minutes, eyes scanning the trees. The woods were quiet, no movement. But the feeling stuck with me. A house isn't a home when your kid doesn't feel safe inside it. That night, I lay awake replaying the scene in my head. Eli in his pajamas, Rachel with worry behind her smile. That's when I realized this wasn't about a basketball hoop. This wasn't about grass height or mailbox placement. This was about power, about fear, about someone who'd gotten away with controlling people for too long and had no idea they'd just picked the wrong family. The next day, I opened the HOA documents again, and that's when I saw it. Page 6 of the Community Charter, altered. The PDF file I had from closing day was clean, but the version Donna handed me? Different file name, different section headers, dozens of rules inserted between original ones. I printed both, laid them side by side, highlighted every fake entry. The entire violation system she was enforcing was a lie. And if that was a lie, what else was she willing to fake? Rachel was pacing the living room now every night. Eli stopped playing outside. He stopped smiling when I brought up the basketball hoop. He was retreating. And I was furious. It wasn't just about our family anymore. It was about every family that had ever backed down and moved out. And I was done being polite. But none of us knew that just a few nights later, at exactly 1:03 a.m., we'd will be standing face to face with a fake cop and a loaded gun pointed at our door, and the person who changed everything wasn't me. It was my 13-year-old son. The next note didn't come in an envelope. It came tucked beneath our windshield wiper, folded with surgeon-level precision and sealed with red wax, the kind people used back when letters meant war declarations. This one didn't say, "Dear Resident," or "Friendly Reminder." It said, "Last Warning. Remove all violations. Pay outstanding balance, or else." No name, no contact info. Just a crimson HOA logo stamped across the bottom like it was the signature of some shadow government. Rachel was the one who found it, and she was shaking when she handed it to me. "This isn't normal," she whispered, like she was scared someone was listening. "This isn't about fines anymore. This is a threat." She wasn't wrong. I've worked in private home security for over a decade. I've read threat assessments that started with notes just like this. And they always ended in two ways. Someone caved, or someone escalated. Eli was silent when I showed him the note, just nodded slowly, walked into the living room and shut the curtains. It was broad daylight. The worst part? I could see the quiet slipping over my family, the way fear slowly silences people, not with volume, but with tension, with tiptoes, with glances over shoulders and conversations that trail off halfway through. And then came the next escalation, the real one. It was tucked inside a violation notice for non-compliant decorative elements, our doormat of all things. But hidden in the envelope was something else, a bright orange flyer with a black border like a wanted poster. New enforcement measures in effect. Community standards will be maintained without exception. Security Compliance Officer. Assigned, Rick Sanders. No badge, no department, just a black and white photo of a thick-necked guy in wraparound sunglasses with his arms folded across a security vest. Rachel blinked twice. Who the hell is Rick Sanders? Then the real punchline, scribbled across the bottom in ink, not printed, were the words, "Rick's my cousin. He doesn't like troublemakers." Donna, she'd handwritten it. She wanted us to know it was personal. That night I installed 2 more cameras, front porch and driveway. I upgraded the night vision, adjusted the sensitivity, and configured cloud sync backups. I'd seen this playbook before. Escalate fear until the target runs, or cracks. We weren't doing either. I sent the flyer to a buddy of mine who works county law enforcement. He ran the name Rick Sanders. No law enforcement history, no certifications, not even a private security license on file. Just 2 citations for trespassing and 1 expired truck inspection. So this was the new game. Donna wasn't just making up rules. Now she was making up enforcers. Eli was starting to ask questions, smart ones, scary ones. Dad, if this guy isn't a real cop, and he shows up with a gun, what happens if we call 911? Will anyone even believe us? That one stopped me cold. Because he was right. We lived in a secluded neighborhood with a reputation for quiet. No witnesses, no cameras but mine. And if Rick showed up wearing a uniform and yelling sheriff, who would believe a scared family over a fake badge? I started keeping a go bag near the front door, flashlight, printouts of real HOA bylaws, USB backup of our video footage, my old stun gun. I wasn't paranoid. I was preparing. Rachel, on the other hand, was cracking. I caught her pacing the hallway at 2 a.m., staring through the peephole like she was waiting for a storm. "We should just pay it," she whispered. "Maybe it'll go away." But that's the trap. That's how they win. It starts with $200 for a basketball hoop. Then $400 for violation corrections. Then $1,000 for the security officer visit. It never ends. You either feed the monster or you fight. Eli was the only one who hadn't spoken much since the flyer. I asked him if he was okay. He nodded. "I'm not scared of some fake cop." I wanted to believe him, but I could see the way he kept checking the windows. He wasn't afraid of Rick. He was afraid of what Rick might force me to do. So I tried to give him control. We turned it into a project, father and son, installed an extra sensor under the deck, ran a cable from the porch camera to his room so he could see who was outside before opening the door. We laughed. We high-fived. But there was a nervous energy behind it, like we were sharpening swords for a battle we hoped wouldn't come. Then came the real warning, the one that told me this was no longer just about intimidation. It arrived in the mailbox without postage, just a plain white envelope, sealed tight. Inside, a photo. Our house, at night, taken from across the street. The porch light was on. Rachel and Eli were visible through the window. I was on the porch holding a coffee cup. The angle? It was taken from ground level, maybe 30 feet away. Underneath the photo, someone had scrawled 2 words in thick black marker. TikTok. I didn't show it to Rachel. I didn't show it to Eli. I just walked straight to my computer and started backing up every file, every recording, every camera feed to 3 separate cloud servers. I made a physical copy on a USB and stored it inside a waterproof pouch beneath the crawl space. I wasn't just defending my home anymore. I was preparing for war. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that the war would arrive less than 72 hours later, at exactly 1:03 a.m., with 3 hard knocks, a fake badge, and a loaded gun. The next morning, I poured myself a strong coffee, sat down at the dining table, and opened 2 laptops, one for research, one for war. I wasn't going to wait for Rick Sanders to show up in the middle of the night waving his dollar store badge. If Donna wanted to play games, I'd meet her at the source, the paper trail. First, I dug into the HOA documentation I'd been handed at closing, the official bylaws, the community guidelines, the FAQ packets. Every line was boring, clean, legal. Then I pulled out Donna's version, the community standards manual she gave us on day 1. And that's when the alarm bells started blaring. Her version had an extra 37 pages, sections labeled 4C, 5D, and even a 7B subsection that outlined seasonal property inspections. none of which appeared in the original documents filed with the county. And that was just the beginning. Her manual claimed residents had to submit curtain colors for approval, pay $100 fines for non-standard porch furniture, maintain bi-weekly perimeter foliage trimming compliance. You know what that means? Mow your bushes on a schedule, or else. It was all fake, completely fabricated by someone who knew 90% of homeowners would never double-check. I grabbed a highlighter and started marking every added rule. By the time I hit page 74, the entire document looked like a murder scene, neon yellow streaks bleeding across every page of Donna's empire. I scanned every one of her fakes into a PDF and named it what it really was: Fraud Manual V1.0. Then I turned to the real detective work. What had she done to other families? It started with a whisper from a stranger. An email from an address I didn't recognize. standalonefox@protonmail.com. The subject line said, "You're not the first. Search, Whispering Pines Departure 2022. I ran the search. Then I ran another. And another. And by the time I find a shed, I had a spreadsheet of 14 families who had left the neighborhood under sudden circumstances in the last 5 years. I pulled property records. Every one of them had been hit with HOA fines 6 months or less before they sold. Some were small, $600 here, $900 there, but a few were staggering. One elderly couple, the Kellys, sold their house at a 30% loss and moved out of state. Their exit interview with the real estate agent mentioned harassment and unexplained enforcement visits. Another couple, the Grants, had their car towed during a weekend vacation. The HOA claimed it was unregistered despite valid plates. They moved out 11 days later. I even found a Reddit post from a guy who described Whispering Pines as HOA North Korea with roses. The post had one upvote, no comments, deleted account. They'd all left, silently, quietly, without fight. And I was starting to see why. I closed the laptops and stared at the wall. This wasn't a neighborhood. This was a funnel. Donna's funnel. She'd created a system where she could manufacture violations, fine people into exhaustion, and then either collect the cash or pressure them into selling cheap, probably to someone on the inside. And if what I was seeing was real, then Rick wasn't the muscle. He was the cleanup crew. I stepped outside to clear my head. The morning fog hung low over the gravel road. Pine needles crunched under my boots as I walked to the edge of the property. That's when I saw her. Mrs. Ling, the elderly woman who lived 2 doors down. She was watering her flower bed, carefully trimming her gardenias like she did every morning. I raised my hand in a friendly wave. She flinched. Not just startled. She recoiled like I'd pointed a gun at her. Then she shuffled inside so fast she left the hose running. That was it. The final piece. The silence wasn't passive. It was protective. These people weren't just afraid of fines. They were afraid of retaliation. Retaliation that probably looked a lot like Rick Sanders at 1 a.m. That evening, I sent out 10 anonymous messages to the names I'd found. Former residents, neighbors, business contacts. One replied within an hour. A man named Tony, former resident, landscaping contractor. He'd been fined $4,000 for excessive equipment visibility because he parked his truck in his own driveway. Donna had claimed he was running a commercial operation out of his residence. He fought it for a month. Then his business license was flagged for zoning violations. Then he got an anonymous tip that his tools were a safety hazard. Then his wife got a concerned neighbor letter warning them they were creating a hostile environment. He sold his home and left within 6 weeks. He ended the message with one line: I still have receipts. Let me know if you're serious. I messaged back instantly. I'm serious. By midnight, Tony had sent me a folder with payment stubs, voicemail recordings, even photos of Donna walking the neighborhood with a notepad and a camera, like she was casing the joint. But the most disturbing part? One file was a recording labeled Compliance Meeting Audio 2. In it, you could hear Donna's voice. If people won't respect the rules, we make them uncomfortable until they do. Everyone breaks eventually, especially when Rick stops by. He's very persuasive. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I played that audio 3 more times. Then I backed it up, twice. Because now I wasn't just preparing. I was documenting. And when I closed my eyes, all I could see was Rick's face on that flyer, and Eli's silhouette standing in our hallway. It was no longer a question of if Rick would show up, only when. And when he did, he'd find out the hard way that we weren't like the other families. The next envelope was hand-delivered. No stamp, no return address. Just the HOA logo, printed in blood-red ink, staring up from our welcome mat like a silent dare. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 1 sentence. Final enforcement visit scheduled, 72 hours. That was it. No time, no signature, no explanation. Just the quiet threat of something coming, something we couldn't stop, something Donna thought we'd be too afraid to face. Rachel read it once and sat down hard on the arm of the couch. "Is she serious?" she whispered. "She's sending him? Here?" "She's bluffing," I said. But I didn't believe it. And neither did she. Eli was in the doorway. He didn't say anything. Just stood there holding his cereal bowl like he'd walked into a war room instead of breakfast. I couldn't take it anymore. I called Donna directly. I wanted to hear it in her voice, that edge, that smug confidence that told me how far she was willing to take this. She picked up on the second ring. "Good morning," she said, like she was hosting a tea party. "Donna," I said, keeping my voice flat. "What exactly does final enforcement visit mean?" There was a pause, just long enough for her smile to curdle. "It means Rick is coming by to explain compliance procedures in person." "In what capacity?" I asked. "He's not a law enforcement officer. You know that." She laughed. Not a big laugh, just a breathy scoff, like I was the one who didn't understand the rules of her little kingdom. "Rick has certain community responsibilities," she said. "We don't appreciate hostility here. We expect cooperation. This is your final opportunity to settle your balance quietly." I had the call recording, I had the email thread, and now I had her on. Rickard threatening an unauthorized enforcement visit. "You do realize impersonating law enforcement is a felony, right?" I said. There was another pause, then her voice dropped a register. "We handle problem residents our way," she said. "Don't make things harder for your family than they need to be." Click. That night, I tripled our perimeter surveillance. I installed a wireless 4K camera across the road, hidden in a birdhouse. Motion-activated floodlights at both corners of the house, full-spectrum IR on the back deck. This wasn't just about catching them. This was about catching them in a way they couldn't deny. Eli helped me splice the cables. He didn't ask questions anymore. He didn't complain. He just worked. Methodical. Quiet. Like he knew what was coming too. But Rachel, she was unraveling. I found her folding the same towel 3 times in a row. I gently took it from her and said, "We're almost through this." She didn't look up. "We shouldn't have come here," she whispered. "We should have just paid. Or moved. Or anything but this." I didn't know what to say, because part of me was starting to wonder if she was right. Maybe this was too much. Maybe I'd dragged my family into something they couldn't escape just to prove a point. But then Eli spoke. He was standing by the sliding glass door, looking out over the backyard. "If we move away now," he said, "she wins." Rachel blinked, slowly, her eyes red from holding it in. I felt the shift. It wasn't big, but it was enough. We weren't a scared family anymore. We were a targeted family, and we were preparing to fight back. The next morning, the flyers hit the neighborhood. Bright orange, taped to every mailbox, every lamppost, every tree trunk like it was a wildfire warning. Non-compliant resident alert. Subject, our address. Details, hostile behavior, rule defiance, safety concerns, compliance enforcement visit scheduled. Residents urged to maintain distance. They had used the same language they'd use for a criminal. Neighbors looked away when we walked by. One man pulled his child into the car faster than I'd ever seen. Someone sprayed trash on our mailbox in red paint that afternoon. Eli stood outside with a rag and wiped it off without being asked. That night, he handed me something I hadn't seen in years, his old toy Nerf blaster. Modified, weighted, painted black with glowing blue LEDs. "I know it's not real," he said, "but it might make them think twice." I stared at it, then at him. He wasn't joking. This was the same kid who used to build Lego cities and fall asleep watching space documentaries. Now he was prepping a prop for intimidation optics. Because that's what Donna had done. She had turned a quiet kid into a silent strategist. She had turned our dream home into a fortress. And I was done waiting. I called the county clerk's office, confirmed once again there were no legal enforcement rights in the HOA bylaws, no security division, no Rick Sanders. Donna had fabricated the entire infrastructure of her fake authority, and most residents had believed her for so long she didn't even need it to be real anymore. I forwarded all my footage, documentation, and voice recordings to a secure cloud server with two-factor authentication. Gave the credentials to a trusted friend. "If anything happens," I said, "you know what to do." And then I waited. One day passed. Nothing. Second day. More stares, more whispers, but no Rick. Then, at exactly 12:59 a.m. on the third night, a motion alert lit up my phone. Porch camera. Movement detected. I switched to the live feed. There he was. Rick Sanders. Bald. Built like a refrigerator. Wearing a black security shirt 2 sizes too small. Plastic badge. Walkie-talkie. Holster. Full. No visible ID. And behind him, Donna. Clipboard in one hand, flashlight in the other. They walked up the path like they were hunting something, like they owned the night. 3 knocks echoed through the cabin. Not polite, not hesitant. Bang, bang, bang. Then a voice that tried to sound official but cracked under pressure. "Sheriff's Department, open up immediately. We have multiple complaints." Rachel gripped my arm. Eli was already standing in the hallway, holding the toy blaster at his side. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from focus. This was it. Everything we'd prepared for, everything Donna had threatened. It was happening. Right now. And what Rick didn't know was that my son had already made a decision. He wasn't going to hide. He was going to stand his ground. Bang, bang, bang. The sound rattled through the cabin like gunfire. Our windows shook. The porch light flickered. "Sheriff's Department, open up immediately." The voice was wrong, too loud, too practiced, like a school play version of a cop. Rick Sanders was standing at our door, one hand hovering over the holster strapped to his thigh, the other gripping a flashlight pointed straight through the window. My phone buzzed again. Motion alert. Camera feed rolling. Cloud backup syncing. High definition. Time-stamped. Exactly as planned. Donna was a few feet behind him, standing with her clipboard like she was hosting a corporate audit. Her hair was perfect. Her expression wasn't. She looked unhinged, eyes wild, face twisted into something between victory and panic. "Final notice," Rick barked. "Open the door, or we'll make entry." He actually said it like that. Make entry. Like he was kicking in a cartel compound instead of confronting a dad, a mom, and a 13-year-old kid over a made-up mailbox rule. Rachel gasped behind me. I could feel her arm shaking against mine. But Eli? He wasn't shaking. He stepped forward, quiet, calm, Nerf blaster in both hands, modified, LED lights glowing blue like a sci-fi weapon, painted matte black, and in the dark, from a distance, it looked real enough to make a desperate man think twice. "Dad," he said, voice steady, "let me handle it." I blinked. "Eli, no, let me—" "I'm not gonna hurt anybody," he said, voice still calm. "Just trust me." And before I could stop him, he was already moving, slow, measured, no panic. He walked to the front door like he'd rehearsed this 100 times. He reached for the knob, turned it just enough to crack the door open. The LED porch light cast a beam directly onto Rick's chest. Donna gasped, and then Eli stepped forward just far enough to raise the Nerf blaster, not aiming, just holding it, lights flashing. Pew-pew-pew noises chirped as he squeezed the trigger. "Get off our property!" Eli shouted, louder than I'd ever heard his voice. Rick's face twisted. For a second, he froze, trying to process whether this was a toy or a threat. Then the blaster lit up again, lights flashing in his face. Rick flinched, stumbled, tripped backward. The plastic badge on his chest popped off and bounced down the porch steps. And that's when the spell broke. Donna screamed. Rick scrambled to his feet, tripping over his own boots. They ran. Rick first, barreling toward the car like a linebacker with his pants too tight. Donna hot on his heels, still screaming about residents and consequences. I stepped forward just in time to catch the final image on the camera. Donna's clipboard flying into the ditch. Rick fumbling with his belt. And Eli, standing at the threshold with that blaster still in hand, breathing hard. I didn't say a word. Neither did Rachel. We just stood there, watching the red taillights disappear down the gravel road. And in the sudden silence, I heard Eli whisper, "Did I do okay?" I looked at him, my kid, still holding a plastic toy like it was a shield, and I realized something that hit deeper than I expected. This wasn't about fines, or rules, or one family's fight with a power-hungry HOA queen. This was about fear. And what happens when someone refuses to live in it anymore? "You protected your family," I said, putting my hand on his shoulder. "You stood up. That's more than okay." He nodded, once, then quietly walked back inside. Rachel followed, locking the door behind her. And I got to work. I pulled the footage, every frame, every camera angle. Rick pounding on the door, Donna issuing verbal threats. The toy, the panic, the fall, the badge hitting the steps. It was perfect. Every second time-stamped, every movement captured. And that cheap plastic badge, it had a Party City price tag still stuck to the back. You couldn't script it better if you tried. At 2:17 a.m., I emailed the full package, video, audio, documentation, to my attorney, the county sheriff's office, the state regulatory board, and 3 local news outlets. Subject line, impersonation, HOA fraud, and a 13-year-old's defense. I slept for 2 hours. Then woke up and watched the footage again. Not because I had to, but because it reminded me why I'd started fighting in the first place. Not for pride, not even for revenge, but because one day, Eli would grow up. And I wanted him to remember that his parents didn't back down when it mattered. That standing your ground, even with a toy blaster, sometimes makes all the difference. By sunrise, the story had started to spread. One of the reporters emailed back asking for an interview. The sheriff's office called asking for a formal statement, and in the quiet between it all, I heard Rachel laughing again, really laughing, for the first time in weeks. Not because it was over, but because she saw it too. The fear was shifting, not from us, but to them. The tyrants, the fakers, the ones who thought no one would ever stand up. And what Donna didn't know, what she could never imagine, was that her downfall hadn't come from a lawsuit or a warrant. It came from a 13-year-old boy with a toy blaster and the courage to say no. The HOA board meeting was scheduled for Wednesday night. PM sharp, Whispering Pines Community Center. The same place Donna had ruled uncontested for over a decade. The same room where silence used to echo louder than truth. Not this time. I arrived 20 minutes early, brought a USB drive, a Bluetooth speaker, and a copy of the HOA's official bylaws, the real ones. Rachel sat beside me, still tense but sharper now, eyes forward, head high. Eli stayed home with our neighbor's daughter, but not before making me promise I'd make them squirm. The room filled slowly. People arrived in pairs, some alone, most avoiding eye contact. A few looked at me like I'd grown horns. Others just looked curious. They'd all seen the flyers, heard the rumors. Fake cop, gun, kid with a toy. It was spreading through the neighborhood like wildfire, but no one had seen the proof yet. Donna entered last. Hair perfect, white pantsuit freshly pressed, clipboard in hand. She walked to the front like it was a stage and she was the main act. "Good evening, residents," she began, tapping her fingernails against the podium mic. "Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that HOA meetings are governed by the bylaws." I stood up. "Actually," I said, loud enough for the back row, "I'd like to propose we start with a video presentation. I think the community deserves to see what your enforcement looks like." The projector was already set up. I handed the USB to Tony, the same former resident who'd sent me evidence weeks ago. He was back tonight as a guest and ally. He didn't say a word, just nodded and plugged it in. And then it played. On the screen, Rick Sanders. AM, pounding on our front door. "Sheriff's Department, open up!" Donna standing behind him, muttering orders. Rick reaching for the door handle. Eli stepping forward, LED blaster in hand. Rick's stumble, the badge falling, the Party City tag glinting under the porch light. The room was dead silent. I let it play twice. Then I spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw was a minor holding a toy in defense of his home while a fake cop tried to intimidate his family under the orders of this woman." Donna's face was frozen, pale. Her hands gripped the edge of the podium like it was a life raft. Whispers were already starting in the back rows. She sent a man with a gun to our door over a basketball hoop. She forged enforcement notices, invented rules, fabricated documents. I held up the two copies, hers and the official one. "This version," I said, shaking Donna's. 37 fake pages, fines that don't exist, sections that were never approved. Dozens of families have paid thousands under threats, forged citations, and intimidation. Ask yourselves, how many of you have? An older man in the third row raised his hand. "I paid $3 grand for a mailbox that was apparently too vintage." Another voice. She made me pay $900 for my porch chair. A woman near the front. She threatened to tow my car for being too dusty. And that was it. The dam broke. People stood up, voices rising, confessions, outrage, names, amounts, dates, and all of it pointed back to Donna. I watched her shrink, literally. Her pause, tour sank. Her voice faltered. The smile vanished. "This is all slander," she stammered, tapping her clipboard with trembling fingers. "You can't just... These are private matters. There are rules." "No," I said. "There were lies. And now everyone knows it." Rick never showed up that night. According to one neighbor, he packed his things and left town 2 days before the meeting. Smart move. I turned back to the crowd. "Look," I said, "I didn't move here to start a war. I just wanted to raise my kids somewhere safe. But when a neighborhood turns into a kingdom and a clipboard becomes a weapon, someone has to stand up so that no one else has to." There was a long pause. Then Tony stood up and said, "I second a motion to suspend Donna Wellington pending an independent investigation." Another man echoed, "I second that." Then a woman shouted, "All in favor?" Hands went up. All of them. Even the people who had once looked away. Even the people who'd stayed silent for years. Donna tried to speak again, but her voice cracked. Her hands shook. And this time, no one listened. She gathered her clipboard, her dignity, her heels clicking as she stormed out the side door like a deposed monarch. And just like that, it was over. Or at least, her part was. I stood outside the community center as people trickled out. Some shook my hand. Others just nodded with quiet gratitude. One older woman, Mrs. Ling, walked up with tears in her eyes. "She threatened me," she said. "For 5 years, I couldn't even plant tulips without her approval. I'm so sorry I didn't speak up sooner." "You did now," I said. She smiled. "Your son's brave. You should be proud." "I am," I said. "I just hope he never has to do that again." Rachel joined me as the last people left. She looked tired, but free. And in that quiet moment, I thought the worst was behind us. But what I didn't realize was that Donna had made a phone call right before that meeting. A final call. To someone with a lot more to lose than just HOA control. And they weren't about to let one father, one video, or one 13-year-old ruin the operation they'd built behind the scenes. Not without a fight. Donna didn't go quietly. She was removed from her HOA position by unanimous vote, but less than 24 hours later, she posted bail and was already spinning the narrative. Her statement to local press? "This family edited footage to frame me. Our HOA has always prioritized safety and compliance. We've been targeted by extremists who reject community standards." I watched the interview on my phone while sipping coffee. Rachel rolled her eyes. "Extremists?" Eli laughed. "Cool. Can I make a patch that says rebel scum?" But the tone shifted quickly. Because the sheriff's office hadn't just taken my footage, they'd taken statements from half the neighborhood and found more than they expected. Turns out Donna's fake fines weren't just intimidation. They were income, and that income was never reported. Over 7 years, she had pocketed nearly $112,000 in violation payments. No paper trail, no taxes, no accounting. But it got worse. Investigators pulled records and discovered she'd created dummy vendors for landscaping, mailbox inspections, and enforcement support. Each one linked to a fake business account, owned by her cousin. Rick Sanders. That's right. The guy who showed up with a badge and a belt full of tactical cosplay. He was getting paid by the HOA. And no one had noticed. Because no one had questioned it. Until we did. The state stepped in fast. A formal investigation launched within 48 hours of the board vote. News vans started showing up outside Whispering Pines. The community that once flinched at a clipboard was now front-page news. And me? I was suddenly getting calls from reporters, legal offices, and other HOAs asking for copies of our documentation. It felt surreal. But not as surreal as the moment I walked into my living room and found Eli sitting at the kitchen table, reading through a printed copy of the HOA charter with a red pen in hand. "What are you doing?" I asked. He looked up. "Just crossing out everything that doesn't make sense. Figured I'd help whoever replaces her." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about exposing corruption. This was about restoring trust, giving people a reason to believe again, in community, in neighbors, in fairness. Over the next 2 weeks, the dominoes fell. Donna was indicted on fraud, tax evasion, impersonating a public official via proxy, and misuse of HOA funds. Rick Sanders vanished. His last known appearance was a gas station security cam 2 towns over. No charges filed, yet. A new interim board was formed, made up of residents who'd once been too afraid to speak. Tony, the ex-resident who helped blow the lid off, was asked to join. He declined politely and offered something better, a full report of his findings and a warning to never let it happen again. But something kept bothering me. Just before Donna had lost the vote, she made a call. We found out later it wasn't to Rick. It was to someone listed as M. Chalmers in her phone. No one on the board knew the name. But the number? It traced to a real estate developer based 3 counties over. Chalmers Development Group. They specialized in low-cost property acquisitions, HOA turnarounds, and community reimaging. And guess what? They'd purchased 5 properties in Whispering Pines over the last 4 years, all of them from families Donna had fined into submission. Each property was transferred below market value. Each transaction assisted by a private notary Donna kept on retainer. So yeah, this went deeper than Rick. This wasn't just about control. It was a pipeline. Donna used fear to lower home values, then funneled the properties to Chalmers, who revitalized and flipped them for profit. They were bleeding the community, quietly, strategically. We handed over the files to the state attorney's office. They opened a separate investigation. We never saw M. Chalmers, but I have a feeling they're sweating. As for us, we rebuilt. Neighbors who'd once turned their backs started knocking again, not with warnings, but with cookies. Apologies, offers to help. The basketball hoop came back. Rachel planted new flowers. I took the cameras down. But Eli kept the toy blaster, mounted it in his room like a trophy. Under it, he put a plaque. Defense of Home, 1:03 a.m. Some days I'd catch him staring at it. Not with fear, but with pride. Not because he scared someone away, but because he stood his ground without backing down. Not with anger, but with courage. And that courage, it echoed. Across streets, across neighbors, across every whisper that used to say, "Stay quiet," because silence had protected Donna. But truth set the whole neighborhood free. 2 months later, a knock came at our door. This time, it wasn't at 1:00 a.m. It was a quiet knock. Mid-morning, no flashlight, no badge, just a woman in her late 60s holding a tray of banana bread. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said. Her name was Clara. Lived 5 doors down. I'd never heard her speak a full sentence before. She looked nervous. "Thought I should have come sooner," she said, eyes flicking up toward the camera over our porch. "But better late than never, right?" She handed over the tray. Rachel took it, smiling politely. I waited. Clara shifted her weight. "My husband and I," she said, "we've lived here 18 years. We saw what Donna did to you, and what your boy did back. I just wanted to say thank you, for not folding, for standing up." I nodded. "We just did what anyone would have done." "No," she said, eyes firm now. "Most people didn't. That's the difference." She turned to go, but paused halfway down the steps. "You know the HOA's rewriting the charter, right? A full audit, new elections, everything from scratch." I heard. "They want someone on the review panel with backbone." Then she smiled. "And maybe a little camera experience." That afternoon I accepted the invitation. Rachel joined too. We weren't just rebuilding trust, we were shaping what came next. And Eli? He was invited to speak at the first new board meeting. He stood in front of 70 adults, hands in his hoodie pocket, and simply said, "No one should be scared to live in their own house. If someone makes you afraid over a rule, maybe they're breaking one." Applause. Real applause. Not out of politeness, but out of shared relief. Eli walked off the stage, cheeks pink. Tried to act cool. "You crushed it," I whispered. "Yeah," he muttered, eyes wide. Kinda terrifying, but also awesome. He got 2 write-ups in local papers. The town council sent him a letter of recognition for civic courage and composure under threat. He taped it to his bedroom wall, right under the mounted toy blaster. The community changed. Fines were suspended for 90 days. Audits launched into every past enforcement action. Donna was formally charged on 7 counts, including fraud, criminal impersonation through proxy, and misuse of authority. Her trial was set for spring. Rick Sanders? Still missing. Rumors said he was in Florida, or maybe Mexico. A blurry photo surfaced of someone who looked like him working security at a nightclub in Tampa. We'll never know for sure. But what mattered most? The fear was gone. People started hosting cookouts again. Kids played basketball at dusk. And our street, the same street once ruled by threats and silence, became something rare. A neighborhood where people talked to each other again. Rachel and I sat on the porch one night, stars bright overhead, crickets humming in the grass. "It's different now," she said. "Yeah," I nodded. "Feels like a home." Eli popped his head out the front door. "We still got the camera running?" I laughed. "Of course. Why?" "Just wanted to wave goodnight to the entire internet," he said, grinning. Rachel rolled her eyes. "Famous now, are we?" He struck a pose and saluted the sky. "Hey, Dad," he called out as he turned back inside. "Yeah? I'm glad we didn't run." "Me too, kid. Me too. Where are you watching from?" Drop a comment below if you've ever had to deal with HOA madness, or if you've stood your ground and lived to tell the tale. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories where justice hits harder than any clipboard ever could. You're not alone. Not anymore. Welcome to the neighborhood.